for another edition of Mase In Your Face. Now, along with college football immortality, Glen Mason, here's Dan Barrero.
It is indeed that time again. Hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line 64686 if you have stuff for our guy Glen Mason, who, of course, is brought to you by our good friends at Carry Limo. I was ready to have a fight with you, but here's what's funny. You came prepared to basically make the argument that I was going to use on you before I got to it.
Well, you never cease to amaze me. Your grasp of the obvious is amazing. You know
how so?
I'm just saying. I don't really care about these rankings and all this stuff. It changes.
Yes.
But anybody that hasn't been impressed with what's going down at Indiana right now, because it hasn't been done before. And Kurt Cignetti got a lot of attention when he first took the job, and it was taken out of context. But when he said, "Google me, I win," and everybody thought, "Oh, okay, you're at Indiana." Well, they forgot that because you know what? He's winning. Now, here's my point to your point that we agree on. Not only are they undefeated, I don't think they've been scored on in the first quarter. And they're just...
Well, Michigan State did.
Oh, they finally did.
Yes.
Okay, finally.
But then they gave up 10 points, scored 47 unanswered.
And they're just killing people.
Yes.
So if you took that same schedule and you took that red helmet with I think they have an eye on it out, and in normal years it was a winged Michigan helmet or a Ohio State helmet or an Alabama helmet, LSU helmet, Texas helmet, whatever, they'd be ranked probably 3 in the country. Because they just give them the nod, but because it's Indiana, and I guess when they play Ohio State, that'll be the time. But the thing about it is, let's say they play Ohio State, but they lose. But they play Ohio State just like Ohio State played Oregon. Mm-hmm. They'll pay a bigger penalty for losing that game than Ohio State did losing to Oregon.
No question.
I really believe it. But hey, I want to tell you. Don't get me. You said you're going to challenge me. I'm ready to challenge you.
Okay.
Don't get me in a bad mood. I've been on a high like you can't believe.
Is it a natural high?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes when you go to Florida, you bring some product back.
Don't spread rumors.
Oh,
there.
sorry.
I love Naples.
Ever since,
yes.
What do you call it? My guy
Gardsey, yeah,
paid me a compliment last week.
You're on cloud 9.
That Olsen should age as good as I'm telling you.
You love that, didn't you?
And I've had more people pay me compliments based on
that compliment.
Gardsey bringing the attention to that.
All right, seal of approval from Gardsey.
We'll keep it high.
I endorsed you.
We'll keep it on the high road.
And the other thing is, you ever make just a random decision in your life?
Tell me about it.
And it works out well? Huh?
Yeah, sure.
Like when you came to Maynard's with Dan.
That's it.
Well, that's right. Well, I don't know about that.
Think about it. What if you hadn't shown up that day? Who knows? You might never have been on this show.
Yeah, well, if I did what I initially thought I was going to do, I still might be in jail.
Well, that's true. Well, your wife, ex-wife for sure.
I was just driving around randomly.
Yeah, okay.
And just carousing,
Well, that's true. You're a carouser.
And have you ever heard of the Hollywood Sports Complex?
No.
Okay, neither did I. It's out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
And I'm driving, and all of a sudden I said, what the heck's that place? All kinds of cars there.
Really?
But it says sports complex.
Where is this?
Hollywood.
Oh, okay.
And so I said...
Hollywood, Florida.
Hollywood, Florida, you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about Hollywood, Minnesota.
Seriously?
So I make a U-turn. It's out in the middle of nowhere.
Okay.
Make a U-turn. I'm going to check it out. I don't know.
All he does is like drive around now lurking.
I didn't know if it was a bowling alley or what it was. So I park, okay? And I get out, and I'm walking in, and this guy looks at me and he says, "Hey, Glenn." And I go, "My name's Richard." And I go in. Well, it's a bar. And it's packed. And they got a band. And it's lively. People singing, dancing. I'm right with them. Richard was right in the middle of them. I had a blast. I am so glad I made that U-turn and went back in there.
This is the new you. Every day's another adventure for you.
And then the other thing I got to tell you before I forget, I got my dog people, my dog park people in the morning.
Right.
And I mentioned it last week because when I came back, they said, "We're so glad you're back. why don't you throw yourself a welcome home party?
Yeah.
Not them throw me one.
Right.
So anyway, I said, okay, come over Sunday. So Sunday I invited him
Thanks
over.
for the invite.
And you're not part of the dog people.
Apparently not.
And I had quite a group. Lindsay was there, and Adam was there,
Yeah.
Allie, Emily.
Any eligible chicks?
No, Carol,
Okay.
John, Renee, and Kathy. I don't mix pleasure with business. This is a business group. But they came over. You talk about, I had the fireplace going.
Oh, nice, yeah.
We sat in the living room.
Churchill room?
No, too many people for the Churchill room.
Oh, okay.
But they had a little tour, okay?
So they got a glimpse of it.
And we sat there, had some wine, and we sat around and talked like human beings, just discussing things, a variety of things. And no rush
Civilly?
for me to cook. Absolutely.
Nice.
But I got a new favorite word out of this talk.
What's that?
Because someone said about this show, says, I still can't believe you're on that show with Barrero.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, why do you say that? He said, well, I remember when he wrote for the paper. And the way that he treated you
shabbily
was nothing short of despicable.
Despicable?
My new favorite word. And I don't know if your new name is Danny Despicable or Respectable
worse.
Danny.
Yeah,
I don't know. But
I think Despicable Dan probably works
Dan is
better.
good.
Despicable Dan.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
And so that's my really new favorite word there.
Well, I think again, the moral of the story is the folks that you invited, they're smart. They're thinking, okay, I got two choices here. I can insult Danny or I could insult Mase, but I'm at Mace's house, so why would I go down that road? So let's give Mase the red meat that he's looking for, which is to rip me.
Well, I would say that's a pretty lot of things. But you think that's the first time anybody ever brought these subjects up to me?
Oh, God, no.
Huh?
Comes up all the time.
Yeah, I mean, because you're ruthless. Ruthless.
I had a ruthless streak to me. Yeah, I still do, but
You're
it's
not
part of the
much better.
job. Well, no, it's about the same.
The only difference now with me, because you have to face me face to face. Other than that, you'd just be going.
After 9 games, Michigan, national champion Michigan a year ago, after 9 games, last year averaging 41.9 a game. Indiana, 46.6.
Oh.
Michigan, last year, average margin of victory, 35-2. Indiana, 32.9. Michigan, 23 opponent record to that point, 36-44. Indiana, 2024 opponent record, 34-45. Really not all that much different. Through 9 games, for the record, Michigan was AP number 2, to your point, and college football playoff number 3. Meanwhile, Hoosiers are what? Eighth in the AP poll. Is that what it is? And are they also 8 for the postseason?
I think it's 8 for the playoff.
Now I'm
There's the proof.
I'm going to ask you an obvious question.
Okay.
Are they stealing signals at Indiana?
Connor Stallions?
Huh?
Got a new job?
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that. You know why? We're going to talk plenty of Gophers and some other college football stuff. Officially, I call him Sig. Signetti became my hero this week against Michigan State. I'm curious to know what you would do in the same situation. They're up 47-10, okay? There's like 5.5 minutes to go, and they face 4th and 1 at their own 29. Now, I tend to think 99 out of 100 coaches, knowing that even if they go for it and fail, they're not going to lose the game, they still just punt it. Just punt it. It's 4th and 1.
I'd have punted it.
Right. You'd have punted it, right?
Yeah.
He gets so irked that they have to give the ball up at all. He's gesturing, just get the yard. And sure enough, they hand the ball off, and he gets the yard. Happens again at about the 40. Same thing. And it cracks me up about him. I think it's part of why he's good. He gets worked up about the weirdest things. He was ticked that at 47-10, they were going to have to punt with 5 minutes to go in the game, and so he refused to do it. Nobody else. Who else does that? I'm not even sure Saban would do that, would he?
I don't think so.
They're not going to be able to keep him, though, Mace. That's what, are they? Is there any chance they can keep him more than 1 year?
Only if they pay him a lot of money.
Guardsy thinks, you're nodding in agreement. Let's save that thought and get some money.
Nodding in agreement that they can keep him?
Yeah. He may have an idea. We'll see.
The Fan and 2 men and a junk truck. Speaking of money, you want to give you a shot to put a grand in your hand with our national cash contest. The second keyword of the day is dollar. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword dollar.
More with Mase and Despicable Danny when we come.
Get up!
You could argue that the challenge in Indiana is one we've discussed here at the University of Minnesota sometimes. This was when P.J. Fleck had his breakout season. It was the old, well, if somebody's good here, where, as you've pointed out to us, it's tough to win, can you really keep them? I mean, even if you pay a lot, there's always going to be an Oklahoma or a Florida that comes along and says, we can triple that if we want to. So Garzi seems to think there's a way to keep Cignetti at Indiana. I have no idea what it might be.
It's what Mase said. It's money.
Well, I don't think it's enough.
Well, here's the other thing. Here, I always say that money.
Yeah.
And investment in the program.
But you know what's crazy, Dan, is the schools where it's easier to win, the Blue Bloods,
yes,
they pay the most.
They do.
The schools where it's really hard to win, they don't pay as much.
That's true.
And I can tell you, generalization, but most coaches, okay, hypothetically, let's just say you're coaching at Rutgers. I'll use Rutgers.
Okay. Gophers' opponent this week.
Yeah, and let's say they're paying you $5 million a year. Use that figure. And the Ohio State job opens up, and they say, we want to hire you. We can't pay you $5 million. We can only pay you $3 million. Most coaches would still leave. Because I can tell you one thing. If you're a true coach, if you win on Sunday, you win on Saturday, on Sunday, I don't care how much you're making, you feel like $1 million. Yeah. If you lose on Saturday and Sunday, you feel
that's true.
It's a fair point. Yeah, it's a good point.
And the other thing is, if you look at it realistically, the Blue Bloods, it's a lot easier to win consistently, year in and year out. You know.
Yeah, there's no question. There's more pressure, though.
There's more pressure in the things that go. But, you know, guys that are in it, they don't think about that. Most guys don't think about it. I'll tell you about a story, okay? True story. Hayden Fry at Iowa. I was coaching at the University of Kansas, and we used to go to the Fiesta Bowl Frolic in Scottsdale every year. And we go play golf. And there's a bunch of coaches in a van.
Carousing.
And Hayden Fry's sitting in the back. And out of nowhere, he says, you know, boys, I got one of the best jobs in the country. You know, okay. And he says, I wouldn't take one of those jobs like Ohio State or Alabama or Texas. And I'm sitting up there as a young coach. I'm thinking, what is he talking about?
Are you nuts?
And then he elaborated. He said, let me tell you. He said, they pay me a lot of money in Iowa City. The expectations aren't unreal. And he said, the demands on my time are minimal. And he said, I can be my own man. And he said that, you know what? And he stayed there a long time.
Mason.
And who stayed there a long time now after him? Kirk Ferentz. And he's had a lot of, 20, how many? 26 years?
26.
And so they've had 2 football coaches at Iowa since 1968.
And about the time they had like 15 of them here.
So, I guess I'd have to, in retrospect, say, Hayden knew what he was talking about.
There is something to be said for that, for sure.
And the other thing that plays into now that you'd have to worry about, if I was Cignetti, obviously they got good football players there, and he's a good coach, and so it's a good match. But with this idea of the transfer portal, you know, I don't know who it is, but all of a sudden you could have a lot of good players one year, and if you don't have a bag full of money, they're gone. And I don't know this for sure, but if you don't think there's not other teams that are looking, trying to get those guys, and now they all have agents.
Right.
So now the agent's on the phone, he's saying, hey, Sig, my boy really likes it here, but I got a couple calls about him, and he might have had calls or not. You don't know.
Right.
You better up the ante, or he's probably going to go.
Yeah, that's where also money is a factor. Well, on that side of it is if you have an investment, if the collective's good, if the whole bit, which is crazy. The other thing about leaving, Mase, you're right. The blue blood jobs, it all depends on timing. I think the money makes it easier to say no to like a lateral move to another conference or something.
Absolutely.
Like where you might just say, I don't know if I can do this here. Am I going to do what Bielema did and go to Arkansas and get a little bit more money?
Right.
But the blue blood jobs, that's a completely different animal.
Well, let me ask you this,
open all the time.
So, do you think it's at all helpful? I think he's 62.
3, I think.
Is he 63? Okay,
Yeah.
Well, even better if that's true. Whatever he is, he's not like 45 on the come. So to that extent, is it possible that he thinks differently? Maybe if you're 62 or 63, you say, you know what? I don't need to get on that treadmill. I really don't. They're gonna up me again on the money. I got a beautiful house. He's talked about the beautiful house he's got in Bloomington. Oh, seriously?
Oh, it was on social media.
Oh, was that right?
I didn't know they had a house like that in Bloomington, Indiana.
And
really?
Money can go a pretty long way, I would think, in a university town like that. Maybe at that age, you don't think quite the same way. Well, I got to do this one, and then I got to do this one, and I got to do that one. Maybe he can. He's programmed differently.
Well. You're right. He might be thinking that way, but I'm saying if you're the AD, whoever's really concerned about the program, you don't know that. You better not assume that.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what he makes now, and I assume they've already. He's going to have to get one big raise regardless. But I mean, what jobs are going to Florida? How about
Florida
Oklahoma?
State?
Isn't Oklahoma going to open?
Good chance,
or possibly. I don't know.
I mean, Florida State's won one game.
Yeah, that's true. So something's going to happen.
He was undefeated last year, and he won one game this year.
Speaking of winning streaks, it's not 9-0, but the Gophers have now won 4 in a row. And for the first time ever, a Gopher football head coach, knocked off Brett Bielema as a head coach. What was it? Was it 0-9 going into this ball game? 0-10. And they finally get it done against the University of Illinois. It wasn't a particularly pretty game, but they did what they needed to do. And I got to believe it feels good because Bielema has just been so successful wherever he's, coached.
Well, yeah, I PJ could talk. I think you make a bigger deal out of the Bielema and that stuff. I mean, if they hadn't beat Illinois in 9, that's a bigger deal. But the thing that's the important thing is that the word I use all the time, that most guys do, and I know PJ doesn't, you build momentum. Mm-hmm. Winning builds momentum and confidence and all those other type of things. And, you get on a roll. And, the schedule's starting to, play pretty good right now because they got 4, and now they play Rutgers, at Rutgers. And everybody would have to say, if the Gophers go there and play well, they'll win. They're a better football team. Now, that doesn't mean they can't lose it.
Right.
If they don't play well and Rutgers plays well, they could lose the game because it's not that much difference. There's only a few really good football teams that can go in a college football game and play poorly and still win if the other team plays good.
And the Big Ten doesn't have many of them.
Oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, they really don't.
Okay, let's talk about Penn State for a second.
Well, I was going to ask you, are you prepared? You don't do this often. Are you prepared to call for the head coach's head?
I'll be critical of the job he's done there.
Do you think he should be? So you think he should be vulnerable?
I think any criticisms that he's getting, he's lost to Ohio State 8 straight times. He's 1-15 against top 5 opponents, and you're talking about at Penn State. I mean, that's a blue blood. It really is. And one thing I was thinking about, I wonder if Rutgers and Maryland coming into the Big Ten hurt Penn State. And people say, what are you talking about? Well, I'm going to say this. With those 2 teams coming in, that made the eastern section of this country Big Ten territory.
Right.
Prior to that, I can tell you, Penn State, before they were in the Big Ten and even after, they controlled that area. I used to recruit out there for Ohio State. And all the recruiters used to say, if you want to find out who the best players are, follow the Penn State recruit around. And once you find them, forget about them. You ain't getting them because the only one people that beat them out there is Notre Dame.
So, in all seriousness, we in the media, we like to get into these discussions of, well, he can't win the big one. But it's always hard to know what the hell that actually means. Do you think that is real? I mean, do you think that's part of what separates coaches, that there is an art to winning? Because as you said, it is a blue blood school. No one expects you to win them all against other blue bloods. But that number is stark. I mean, that's hard to escape and to run from. So is there something about the way he goes about it in terms of game day, in terms of his game day strategy? What contributes to that?
I mean, if you've got the players, if you're looking at, if you do a a real credible job of coaching, okay? Credible job. And you're at a blue blood, your record against other blue bloods, probably 50-50.
Yeah, right.
Okay, then you say, all right. Now, if you're at a blue blood and your record against blue bloods, and it's, let's say you're 75%, well, you must be doing a better job of coaching, because there's not going to be that big a difference in players. So it's got to be the approach, the organization, how you organize your staff and all that kind of stuff. But when you look at where he's at, regardless of what it is, can't win the big one. Maybe he can't recruit the right ones. Who knows?
Yeah.
And, I just got a call. They're going to do a documentary on Nick Saban. The same people that did one on Michael Jordan. Same production
That's
company.
big.
So they called me up, and they wanted to start with me on a Zoom and probably see what kind of
if you make the cut.
BS that. And then it went pretty good because the guy's following him anyway. And I asked him, why me? He said, well, we've done our research because you knew him back when. You have a relationship with back then.
Yes.
And, a lot of guys that might have, maybe they're not even around anymore. But he said, when did you really realize me? I coached with him at Ohio State, and I recruited against him when he was at West Virginia. When he was different.
You've said that before.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, I really didn't realize that coaching end of it. It was the recruiting end that caught my eye back then. First, when I was at Ohio State, he was at West Virginia, Northeast Ohio. He gave me a run for money. Now, he never beat me, but he shouldn't beat me, okay? And then we had an opening, and Earl Bruce had anybody to rec. I went in there. I said, this guy can really recruit. Another guy on the staff had coached with him, so we hire him. Now, here's my point. There's two parts
So you discovered him?
No.
In a way?
No. Dan, stop.
Oh, calm down.
There's two parts of recruiting.
Cranky.
There's the sales part, okay?
I was trying to give you a compliment.
And the evaluation
Can't
part.
even take compliments, Gursey.
Because I'm into accuracy.
Oh, okay. All right.
And evaluation. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that, because it used to be 16 millimeter film, and if you couldn't make up your mind on the guy, I'd go to somebody else on the staff. And I'd say, hey, take a look at this. What do you think? And typically another guy would look at it and he'd say yes or no. That was the extent of it. When I first took a film to Nick Saban and gave it to him.
Oh, I think you've told us this, yes.
I mean, it was so thorough.
Yeah.
And he went through, and then he came back and told me yes or no and why, particular. And I thought to myself, I wasn't even looking at that. Or maybe I didn't even see it. I guess what I'm saying, he had an eye for talent.
Right.
And he was also a good salesman. So it was a perfect storm. So that's how we got involved in that.
So you think you made the cut. So that probably means they'll come back with a camera crew at some point, and then they'll do, a more extensive, maybe the church. That'd be a great backdrop for it. You put the fire on.
If you guys are nice, they might even invite you over.
You kidding me? I wouldn't go over if it's the last thing.
Oh, come on now.
No, I'm done. No, it's over. It's over. You've sort of laid out your claim. We're.
I bet Guardsy come.
I'll have food.
I'll have hors d'oeuvres.
Yeah, I was going to say, the way to my heart,
There's
Mace.
food. Yeah, it's very possible. So that's interesting. I guess I'm not surprised. I mean, as big a name as he is, how do you think he's doing in his new job? Well, relatively new job.
I don't watch it very much, and I'll tell you why. And I don't make this personal, but I don't like Pat McAfee. I think what he does is taking that show and some of the other stuff he had on the podcast. I just don't find it meeting my taste in athletic. I just don't. It's a clown show, and I'm sure Nick's doing it. I'm sure when he talks, he makes a lot more sense than any of those other guys on there, And but they're paying him a lot of money, so I'm sure he has to be part of the clown show.
Yeah. Well, is it that he takes off his shirt? Is that what bothers you?
Who does? Nick
McAfee?
Saban?
No, McAfee. No. Well, yeah, that would be if Nick did it, it'd be a hell of a story, actually.
I don't know that. I don't watch it.
Oh.
So
Nick's pretty good. Nick's good.
Nick's, I think he's very good.
He's good.
Yeah, I think he's getting better all the time.
I bet this because I used to get all the time. I used to say when I knew Nick, I knew him pretty well. He's a fun guy.
Yeah, you have
he
said
had
that.
personality. Yes. He had everything because everybody I only see him on Saturdays or hear the stories about him, they thought he never smiled.
Well, let me ask you something. So you see what he has attained as a head coach, right? Mm-hmm. Do you buy the notion that whatever way he's changed, that might not make him in a sense as likable as you remember him being then, that's almost automatically the price one must pay to ascend to that level of coaching brilliance? And I'm not saying this sarcastically. I kind of mean it.
No, when I was with him, he wasn't the head coach.
Well, right, exactly.
That's a big difference. It was different, yeah. How many times, my friend Gary Holman says to me all the time, he can't believe how many people go up to him and say, "Hey, Gary, you're from Mase. Boy, he's funny. Yeah. He's got a personality. He's likable."
Too bad he didn't show any of that when he was a head coach. Yeah.
And, Gary says, well, he had to worry about getting Ernie Wheelwright eligible, things like that. But there's a lot of stuff.
That'll take your humor away, you're saying?
There was a lot of stuff on your plate, and I had to deal with you.
Yeah, you had problems with more people than me.
You were just one of them.
Scoggins was one of them. And here's the thing about Scoggins.
No.
Scoggins is about everybody loves Scoggins except you.
No. The dynamic duo, Barrero and Royce.
Oh, well,
they were the guys.
But I heard you and Scoggins went at it pretty good. And he's like the nicest guy in the world.
No, the guy I went at it with.
The beat guy? Who?
No, it was. Remember the guy that followed, Brian Hamilton, who followed the guy that broke the story?
Yes.
George Dorman.
Yeah. Okay, now, when Brian Hamilton came in, because I think said, hey, you got to be the next Pulitzer Prize guy. And it was,
You think they were looking for stuff on you?
It was really funny. Yeah. Then he left. I think he was working in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that's true.
And one of the shows during the week for 1 year that I did during the week, Brian Hamilton, we were on the same set.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah.
Was it tense?
No, not at all.
Did Dorman ever try to get dirt on you?
Yeah. My understanding, was this, and someone reported this to me because whoever the editor of the Pioneer Press was giving a talk, and he laid this thing out that they kind of stumbled on the Clem Haskins deal.
Ganglegate,
Yeah. And in the process, they thought, well, no one's going through that. Let's see if you can find anything on football, okay?
Not Mace's program.
No. And the other thing of that is when it broke, and they came and investigated. They hired the Glazier law firm to investigate us, all that stuff. I had to handle my computer, everything over. And after that
Your computer included?
Absolutely.
Oh.
And after it was over, Udoff was the president.
Mark Udoff.
He called me over and he said, I got to tell you something. He said, the investigators told me, I don't know what kind of coach he is, but he's an honest coach. And Udoff asked him what he said. He says, well, because we went through everything. Normally, the magnitude of football, we'll find something.
Right.
We couldn't find anything.
Well, do you think that's because that you just hit it so well?
Well, like I've always said, smart crooks stay out of jail, dumb crooks go to jail. I don't know. No.
Those are the days.
No, you know why? I'm going to tell you, and I'm trying to hold you now. I always had to look myself in the mirror. And I would have been, if I would have got, been cheating and got caught, man, some guys, it doesn't bother them. It would have bothered me.
You would have had difficulty sleeping, you're saying?
Yeah. My mother would have spanked me.
Yeah. Well, that's. Hey, I'm still surprised they didn't get some dirt.
You're talking about politics?
Yeah.
I got to just say this.
Okay.
My son, Pat, his wife, Jessica Mason, they live in Prior Lake. And I got to give her a lot of credit. She wasn't happy about some of the things that were going on in the school with her her own kids.
Right.
So out of nowhere, she said, I'm going to run for the school board.
Oh.
And she also works. And my question was, hey, you got time for that? And I forget, she says, what's more important than your own kids? So she ran for the school board, and she won.
She's in.
Yeah, I'm so
good for
proud of her. And the thing about it is,
God bless her, man.
Watch out because you don't want to mess with mama bears.
I was going to say that's a thankless job in 2024, man, because everybody's yelling and everybody's screaming, and everybody knows what's right.
I'm proud of her.
Yeah, good for her. Yeah. Well, maybe this is how it'll start. Who's to say where she ends up?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Well, politically, maybe it's the start of a long and productive political career that goes well beyond. No, you got too many skeletons.
You're right.
Yeah, way too many skeletons. Plus, I think you'd have to get married again. I think the public, as weird as this sounds, still is conservative about they don't like the idea of a single, senator who is single. I think you'd have to.
I could make some story up.
You wouldn't even have to make up some of the stories based on what I've heard. It's unbelievable.
Stop.
Sorry. Let's do this. Let's break. We got one more break now. We'll come back and finish up the hour with Mase in Your Face. Top 5 at 5 yet to come, and then Pat Kessler to get back to Election Day and the aftermath. Stay tuned.
Time now for the Vikings Report on the Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings safety Cam Bynum joins Barrero next after this from Miller Lite.
Join the voice of the Vikings, Paul Allen, at Hy-Vee and Savage Tuesday, November 12th. You can stop by from 5 to 6 to meet PA and Vikings fullback C.J. Ham. It's all thanks to Hy-Vee and Pepsi, plus a live Q&A event to follow. All details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
By the way, real quick, Glen Mason back with us for one more segment. He's got one other axe to grind, I think, amazingly not related to me in this particular case. But the age-old issue of when to go for two and when to kick, it came up again in the Tampa Bay game against Kansas City. Okay?
Watched it.
Okay, you watched it. You know what I'm talking about. They score late with like 29 seconds to go. They decide to kick the extra point. Now, 29 seconds for that quarterback is probably enough time that if you make it, they work harder to try to score than they did because it was a tie game. But what was your philosophy on it? Aikman was very vocal about saying, I'm on the road, I'm playing that guy. They screwed up probably leaving any time. They took a timeout they didn't need to, but is that the smart thing to do? Did you do that very much in that situation? Because I don't remember.
Well, the most memorable one I was involved in, we were playing Nebraska. They're number 1 in the country, and playing them at home.
This was when you were in Kansas.
Yeah, and we scored with 52 seconds left to go in the game. And I went for 2 to win and didn't get it, And amazing, at Christmas time, I can't tell how many ties that Nebraska people sent me saying thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Now, they were ugly ties, but they were ties.
Yes,
okay?
the thought that counts.
But I thought, I didn't want the tie. Kansas hadn't beat him forever. But I think when I was surprised there that he went for the tie and go into overtime against Mahomes, because he's the most exciting, dynamic player there is. And my process would have been, this might be my best shot to beat him. One shot for 2 points, and my quarterback's pretty good too.
Yes, he is.
Those two guys are exciting. So in that case, I'd have gone for 2.
I think a lot of people agree. Again, they took a timeout that they didn't need to. They actually could have gone for 2 and had even less time on the clock, where Mahomes probably doesn't have time to go after it. Because I think what they ended up doing, it's a tie game. They got to about the 50, and there was like 4th and 1 or 2. And when it's tied, it's easy to say we'll play for overtime, right? And they certainly would have been more aggressive if they were behind. We'll never know, but I'm with you. I would have gone. I think you got to go for 2 there. You had you're kind of trying to stand tall for one of your former schools.
I've talked about this before, but you always get on some of these, even the Blue Bloods. Some of the people they play on their schedule is ridiculous. Okay,
right.
And I've talked about for these ADs at some of these lesser conferences, they solve all their problems by taking their team and overscheduling. And I just saw my old school, Kent State. I saw where they're out of quarterbacks now. And they had the picture where the quarterback, when they were playing Penn State, is in the cart going to the ambulance, And so I looked up their schedule. Here's Kent State this year. I don't know who the AD is. I'd like to know who it is. But they opened against Pitt. Pitt's having a great year, and they're not a blue blood, but they're awful good. Then they played St. Francis. They lost to St. Francis. I don't know where they're at, okay? Then they played Tennessee and Penn State back-to-back the next 2 weeks.
Goodness.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's cruel.
You know, I guarantee
That's abusive.
that AD's son ain't on that team. You know, you can't do
All
that.
for the money.
You can't, it's not, this is not basketball. It's not golf.
Yeah, right.
It's a physical sport. And even though there's just a big difference. You know, those teams, Pitt, Tennessee, and Penn State, will have a lot of guys on their team that'll play pro football at the next level. Kent State,
No.
they're lucky if they have a TV to watch the game.
Well, you know,
on Sunday.
The comeback, I'm sure the AD would say, is we're poor. This is how we could basically finance our budget for the next 5 years.
I don't buy that because I used to be in that conference when they had some sanity. And they used to call it the coaches conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought because a lot of coaches I think it's because you all had about the same thing.
Right.
About $25,000
resources
to recruit and everybody recruited basically Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. That was it. You didn't go any other place. Not widespread until they put Marshall in there. You know, I had a guy I sent to Florida recruiting, and he went down there for a couple of days. And what I used to tell him, if you visit a guy from Florida and we don't get him, you're fired. I can't afford to put a guy in a plane and fly him up here.
Yeah.
You just can't. So if you find a good player,
You better get him.
And don't bring him up here if we have a 50-50 chance. We've got to get him.
Some limitations.
Yeah.
You had to, the money was not endless at schools like that. It isn't endless, right? Budgets are limited.
Endless. There is no money.
What was your salary at Kent State? Do you remember?
Yeah, I took a pay cut to leave Ohio State.
That's right.
$50,000. And I didn't get a car, though. And I had a car.
That sounds pretty good for the time.
And I had a car at Ohio State.
No car at
No.
Kent State?
No.
$50,000. So what year is that?
That was 1986.
$50,000 at Kent State would go a long way, didn't it?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, it went a long way. And the thing about it, maybe I went too bad, but my assistants.
Yeah.
I mean, I had one assistant making $14,000.
Oof.
No car, no Bentley.
Yeah.
He used to ride a bicycle back and forth.
Man, that's a long time ago. That'll be for the book. All right, are you back?
We're going to do the book.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Can't you say it right?
I'm not sure we could stand each other enough to.
I don't know what the title would be, but whatever it is, by Coach Mason and Despicable Dan.
Despicable Danny.
It's
Barrera.
got a ring to it.
It's alliterative. I grant you that. It's not the adjective I would.
Is that what you're
prefer.
going for? Despicable Dan or Danny Despicable?
I've been called. I think Despicable Danny would probably be better. Are you back next week, or are you on the road again?
I'm here.
Okay, so you're on the road for a while.
Yeah, I'm here.
And then more trips coming up. We won't talk about that.
Trips.
Yeah, I'm not going to get specific.
You know what trip I'm really looking forward to?
Which one?
Gary Holman and I going to the Army-Navy game.
Oh, you're doing.
And you think about the.
Have you done that game before?
I've never been there.
Oh, that's amazing. He's done it. It's supposed to be unbelievable.
And
he went. Didn't you and Nordo go?
We went a long time. Creasel and Nordo have been going the last couple of years.
It's supposed to be remarkable.
And I'm staying at the hotel where the generals stay. I got tickets.
It's good to be Glen Mason. I'm just going to say.
The VIP tailgate. And you think about the records they have this year.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
Army's undefeated. Navy only lost to Notre Dame. The Army still has to beat Notre Dame. So I'm really excited.
It's so fun.
He basically enjoyed the hell out of it. You did it more than once, didn't you?
Yeah, probably 5-6 times.
5-6 times he went.
You're not going this year?
No, I got bumped.
Was that an old Westwood One sort of
the
perk?
USAA brings us.
Oh, okay.
USAA brings us. They kind of took over marketing for the game, and Radio Row was part of the deal. So they bring us there, and it's awesome.
So
this will shock you, Mace. Part of the reason I like it is there's a nice dinner involved on Friday night. Yeah.
So I'm flying in. I give you the whole thing. Flying in to Newark on Thursday, getting on the New Jersey Transit,
talking to your sister,
going down to Princeton, staying with my sister Thursday night.
Okay.
Friday, getting on the Amtrak, going to Washington, D.C., check into the Intercontinental. Dinner, next day, VIP, game, party after when Army beats Navy. The next day, I'm going to get on the Amtrak, go back. Sunday, she'll have dinner for us. Monday, fly home. But the other thing is Jersey pizza. There's no equal, okay? And there's a great, great pizza place that Gary Holman used to go to as a kid. Not far
he swears by it?
Yep.
Okay.
Di Lorenzo's.
Di Lorenzo's. That sounds authentic.
And you can't get in. There's no reservations, but I got an in. Does that surprise you?
No, it's almost like, obnoxious how all the ins you have and all the perks you now get in your senior years. It's spread some of that wealth around a little bit. Give somebody else a chance.
Okay, I'm serious now because you've embarrassed me, both you and Gargy. I'm officially inviting you to dinner over my house. If you give me a date, a couple dates, I'll bring you over. I'll treat you good.
Heard this before.
No, serious. I'm saying in front of everybody.
Will Topo be there?
Absolutely.
I'm a big dog guy. I want to meet Topo more than you, to be honest. Will Topo be out? Like, do you keep Topo out, around us, or do you put him?
Oh, Topo's the best behaved dog.
That's what I thought. Okay, even better. Yeah. All right, we got to go. We got a lot to do.
Okay.
We got Kessler coming up. Thanks for coming to see us, and we'll see you back here next week.
Thank you.
Carrie Limousine helps us bring Glen Mason to you. Top 5 will include
Gopher basketball season opener tonight. The Wild with a clunker last night. And did Blake Cashman practice today?